Today we're beginning a new series, The End of Days. By now, I think everyone has probably heard about the prediction made by the Mayan calendar and how it's running out on December 21 of this year, 2012. The Mayan calendar is a calendar that stretches and spans 5,125 years. It began on August 11, 3114 BC, and that calendar ends, coincidentally, on December 21, 2012. And there are a lot of different theories as to what that means, or what will happen, or how credible those hypotheses even are. Some believe that it's going to be the ushering in of a new era for humanity, or others that the earth is going to tilt on its axis 6 degrees and things will shift around globally, or that the Mayans knew that the earth had an expiration date, and that's why their calendar ended on December 21, 2012. Whatever you may think about it, Hollywood took the idea and ran with it, as Hollywood often does, and came up with the movie, 2012. And if you saw it, you know what happened. It wasn't good. The core of the earth began to melt, and tectonic plates were shifting, and global devastation ensued. And if you're like me, you love a great end-of-the-world movie. And there are plenty of them. I mean, we have a hunger for such things. We seem to be insatiable with these end-of-the-world movies, and so a new one's coming out every year, or sometimes several times a year, movies like The Core, and Armageddon, and War of the Worlds, and Independence Day, The Day After Tomorrow. This year was Battleship and the Alien Invasion. Even Pixar got in on the end-of-the-world craze with Wall-E. We can't get enough of these movies. We're fascinated with this idea of the end of the world. But as much as we love the movies, and maybe you saw, 2012, none of us appear to be too bent out of shape over the whole end of the Mayan calendar thing. The December 21, 2012, I don't see anyone getting their affairs in order. I don't see anybody quitting their job because we have less than 2 months to live. I see no one stockpiling food. But aren't those the kind of things that we would do if we thought the world was going to end in 2 months? I mean, wouldn't our priorities change? Wouldn't we act a bit differently? So what's the deal? Why are we living like the world isn't about to end? Maybe we're just really super cool people in the face of impending global doom. Maybe we just have like ice water running through our veins. Or maybe we're just super skeptical people who doubt everything and have don't believe all of the hype about the whole Mayan calendar thing. This is a season for polls, so let's conduct our own polls. Let's do it right now, okay? How about that? Just raise your hand if you think something will happen on December 21, 2012. Something is going to happen on December 21, 2012, so every hand should be up. All right, a couple of you are sharp there. All right. Let's be more specific. How many of you believe the world will end on December 21, 2012? Wow. Come on, somebody? Nobody? All right. How many of you believe that the world will end eventually? Okay, now we're getting at it. Most of us believe the world will end eventually, and not just those of us in this room, but again and again, poll after poll of American people show that Americans believe the world will end sometimes, and a very significant percentage of us believe that the world will end in our lifetime. A Reuters poll was conducted earlier this year. Actually, it was a global poll asking, do you believe the world will end in your lifetime? For Americans, that percentage is 22%. Think about that, 22%. Nearly 1 out of 4 of us believes that the world is going to end in our lifetime. And now, we have a lot of different ideas of what that's going to be like, what it's going to look like. Some believe it's going to be an alien invasion. Others believe it's going to be global warming, or an asteroid hitting our planet, or the greenhouse effect, or the shifting of tectonic plates, or Jesus coming again, or whatever. There's lots of different ideas in terms of how this will happen, but a full 22% believe it will happen in their lifetime. And the polls go on to show that for many, what this leads to is a sense of despair and hopelessness and depression. See, the idea is that if the world is going to end sometime in my life, what's the point? But that's only 22%. That means 3 out of 4 people in America believe the world will continue to go on pretty much as it always has, at least as long as I'm alive. Right? There may be a heaven, and the world may end sometime, but it's not going to be anytime soon, certainly not in my lifetime, and so I don't need to worry about it. And so rather than kind of fret about global meltdown, those in the 3 out of 4 group, the 75% group, have other things to depress us. Namely, our view of life. That we're born, we grow old, and we die. And 30 minutes after our funeral, someone is saying, please pass the potato salad, and the world continues to go on. And this too creates a kind of a despair and a hopelessness. We wonder things like, why am I even here? Where are we going? What's the point of it all? In that great midlife crisis movie, City Slickers, it wasn't an end of the world movie, but a midlife crisis movie, Billy Crystal's character, Mitch, kind of illustrates this kind of hopelessness really well. He attends career day at his son's elementary school where everyone comes in and says, this is what I do for a living. And Mitch's son tells everybody that his dad's a submarine captain. And Mitch is there like, I'm not a submarine captain. I sell airtime for the local radio station. I sell commercials, And no one in the class is really at all excited about what Mitch does for a living. Neither is Mitch. And as Mitch stands in front of this class, he is able to share some counsel with them that is shared in classic midlife crisis despair as only Billy Crystal can do. Just take a look at this clip. Wow. Anybody feeling depressed? So either the world is going to end in our lifetime, and so everything is meaningless, or this is all there is, and all I have to look forward to is retirement in Florida and soft-serve yogurt, which, again, makes everything meaningless. And really, if that's the best that we have to hope for, if everything really is meaningless, it's no wonder that millions today are kind of gripped with despair and depression. It's no wonder that, as we saw in our last series, more than 20% at any given time are on antidepressants. We haven't always been like this, as a people, as a species. 150, 200, 300 years ago, we had great hope for the human race and for our planet. The 17th and 18th century with the Enlightenment and the Renaissance and the Industrial Age, people thought that we were going places, and as we continued to improve, we were going to eventually be able to evolve into a utopian society where we'd be able to eliminate injustice and inequality and hunger and poverty, and we would be able to live healthy and happy. And then in the 19th century, with Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution, we started to believe that we were going to be able to evolve to the point where we would be perfect and we would be able to live forever, and we were going to live in this utopian society. Human beings, we're going somewhere. Our future looks good. It's bright. It's hopeful. But then came the 20th century, and that optimism ran, face first into reality. Hundreds of millions of lives lost in the wars of the 20th century. The Great Depression kind of demonstrated the downside and the imperfection of capitalism. The Holocaust let us see about the evil that is potential within us. The rise and fall of totalitarian regimes demonstrated that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Increased crime and pollution and scores of national conflicts all contributed to shatter the hope that we had in human progress. And so really we've come by our hopelessness honestly through the 20th century. And so, let me just say, I am glad that the Bible gives us a much brighter picture of the future than humanism or evolution or the world is going to end and we're all without hope. 2,000 years ago, a group of men were gathered in an upper room in the heart of Jerusalem surrounding their teacher. And these guys had the highest of hopes. the greatest of expectations. They all could feel it. They knew it. The time was coming. It was coming now. It was going to be tonight. It was going to be tomorrow. But their master Jesus was going to assert his authority and become the king that everyone knew he was. He was going to take the throne in Jerusalem over the Hebrew people. He was going to drive the hated Romans out of Palestine, and a new kingdom would be set up. God's kingdom on earth, and Jesus would be on the throne, and these 12 men gathered around him would have high, prestigious positions in the new government. But then their teacher that night began to talk about strange things. He foretold how the 12 gathered around him that night, now so hopeful, in just a few hours would deny him and abandon him. He talked about going away, saying he had to leave and that where he was going, they knew where it was, but they couldn't yet follow him. And where he was going, he said they would go one day, but not yet. He said he would be killed the next day to fulfill prophecy and to pay for the sins of the world. Now, that hope that had been so tangible in the room was replaced by an equally strong feeling of despair. It seems that the higher our hopes are, when they're not realized, the more deep the despair, and that's what it was for them. It was crushing them, and Jesus, looking around the room and loving these men gathered around him, wanted to encourage them. And so he said some things to them to give them encouragement. And the words are recorded in John chapter 14, verses 1 through 3. And you've probably heard the words before. Maybe you've even memorized this passage. But Jesus, looking into the eyes of his disciples, he said, "Let not your heart be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it weren't so, I would have told you. I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am." So when those that Jesus loves are suffering from despair and hopelessness, what message does Jesus bring them? The message, I am coming back because I have something better for you. When the world was dark and seemingly near its end, what message does Jesus bring to his disciples? I am coming back to take you to a better place. When the disciples thought that maybe we've just been following a dream, it's all a sham, it's not real, what message of hope does Jesus bring them? I will come again and take you to a better place. Why? Why is he coming back? To take them and us to be with him where he is and where he was going. And so Jesus promised his followers that one day he would return to put an end to sin, put an end to suffering, put an end to goodbyes, put an end to aging, put an end to death. And he would take us to be with him in that place he was providing for us, preparing for us, heaven. So where am I going? Why am I here? What's the point? Jesus is coming back. He's prepared something better for me. He's prepared something better for you. And this is it. The second coming of Christ is our only hope as a planet and as a people. We've seen where we're going as a planet. We are not going to evolve into a utopian society or a new form of government that will be able to change the hearts of people and bring about total justice and equality. It's not going to happen. That has been amply demonstrated over the last 100 years. Our only hope as a planet is in this promise that Jesus made 2,000 years ago. I will come back because I am preparing something better for you. And this has been the greatest hope of Christ's followers for the last 2,000 years, ever since the beginning, when the Apostle Paul was locked in the dark, damp Mamertine prison, waiting for the last few hours before he was taken to the executioner to have his head severed from his body. He is able to write with courage to the young pastor Titus. He says that he is looking for that blessed hope and glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. So when Paul's life is near its end, as everything looks dark for him, what does he say is the greatest hope of the Christ follower? The blessed hope that Jesus is coming again. When the Apostle Peter, toward the end of his life, is writing to a church that is being just horrendously persecuted, what hope does he bring them? Peter tells them, set your hope completely on the blessing which will be given you when Christ Jesus is revealed. On that last day, when Christ Jesus is revealed, he will bring a blessing to you, and that is what I want you to focus on as you are being persecuted. What can we hope for when things are difficult? I will come again. I have something better for you. And so over the centuries, whenever disappointment, discouragement, persecution, hardship, death have threatened Christ's followers, the promise of his return has brought courage and strength to endure. Christians have reminded each other, he will come back. He has a different future for us. He is preparing a place for us. And his promise to his disciples 2,000 years ago applies to every one of his followers still today. He will come back so that where he is, there you may be also. Now, I know that right now, probably for most of us, the idea of the second coming of Jesus does not bring hope and comfort, but rather it brings anxiety, fear even, and for a number of reasons. For many of us, and we're going to be addressing these things throughout this series, so I hope you're going to be with us. We're not going to touch on them all today. But for many of us, as we consider the second coming of Christ, it brings anxiety to us, first of all, because we've heard about the second coming of Jesus, and we hear that there's this great time of tribulation that's supposed to come before Jesus comes again, and it's supposed to be really bad, and plagues, and trumpets, and funny stuff from Revelation, and that just seems really scary, and I don't think I want to have anything to do with that. And so can we just keep things as they are? Can we just not even go there, Jesus? Maybe you can kind of come later, but not now. We have anxiety. For others of us, the second coming of Jesus creates anxiety because, we're not really sure if we're ready to meet Jesus face to face. What do I need to do to be ready? We wonder things like, am I good enough to go to heaven with Jesus? Or have I done the right stuff? Or jumped through the right hoops? Or to be ready for his coming? And we have this nagging feeling inside of our hearts that the answer to those questions is no. I haven't been good enough, or I haven't done enough, or I haven't worked the formula. And so we feel anxious and afraid when we think about the second coming. Rather than hopeful, it produces anxiety. And still others of us are anxious about the second coming of Jesus because we're happy with our lives right now, just the way they are. And we don't want anything to change. As many of us consider the second coming of Christ, many of us think, but you know what, I'm happy now. I like my life. I like living in beautiful Colorado. I love being able to experience the things and the affluence of Douglas County. I love my family. I love my job. I love ice cream. I love my house. I love my kids' sports leagues. I love my 401k. I love the Denver Broncos and cheese enchiladas. I love the plans I have for next summer. I love the plans I have for my retirement. I'm a happy camper. What more could I possibly want than what Douglas County has to offer me? And more importantly, we think to ourselves, could what Jesus is be preparing for me right now, could that be anywhere near as good as what I'm experiencing right here? Because we get these ideas of heaven like floating on a cloud and playing harps, and we wonder, heaven's just going to be like a long church service, right? It's like, I think I'll stay here. Now, we would never say these things out loud. I'm just kind of saying them for you. I know you think these things because I think them. This is where we are. We would never say it out loud. But if we're honest with ourselves, we all probably wonder, could what Jesus be preparing for me really be as good as what I'm experiencing here? And the Bible is clear that God has created the good things of this world for us to enjoy. And he wants us to enjoy them. And there need not be any guilt about enjoying life or the good things God has created. But listen, at some point, every one of us will come to the point when we realize that what we need, what we really need, cannot be found on this planet. The point is going to come for every one of us where we're going to see that true satisfaction can only be found in someone and something that can provide me with life beyond this life. And that someone is Jesus, and that something is heaven. Now, any number of things can shake us out of this belief that this is better than what heaven has to offer, or the anxiety about, I'm not sure I want Jesus to come because I like my life now. For me, it was a trip to a little community called Nyamagabe in a little country called Rwanda. About 9 years ago, I was a happy camper, living a great life here in Douglas County, doing what I believe God called me to do, when I found myself in this little community in Rwanda outside of the bubble of Douglas County, and I saw such devastation, such pain, such injustice that I didn't imagine existed. As I stood in a makeshift hospital, standing at the bedside of people crying out and writhing in pain in their last hours of life, dying of AIDS. As I held my newly sponsored child on my lap, 9-year-old Eugenie, and I put my hand on her belly, and I felt the distended, bloated belly, because she had never had enough to eat in her life, and she hadn't had anything to eat in 2 days. As I stood on the killing fields of genocide where tens of thousands of people had died in 3 and 4 days, and as I saw their bodies displayed and these little children with their skulls crushed in out of hatred, I felt such despair in my heart. And I realized then that the only reason I was a happy camper was because I was an ignorant camper. I was a sheltered camper. That there was pain in this world, and while I was praying my prayers, God, thank you for blessing me with everything you've given me. And you don't have to come right now, God. Things are pretty good. At the same time I was lifting those prayers to my Heavenly Father, there were billions of people on this globe saying, come now, Lord. I can't live another day, Lord. You have to free me from this injustice and from this hunger and from this poverty, Lord. And then I saw that truly that our only hope wasn't for better medication or for, more stuff or for more sporting opportunities for my kids or for more vacation experiences for me or a healthier 401k. The only hope for us as a people and as a planet is for Jesus to keep his promise and to come again and to take us to what he's been preparing for us for the last 2,000 years. And experiences like those make us less anxious about the second coming and more excited about the second coming. But we don't have to go to Rwanda to be snapped out of our lethargy. It could be a trip to the doctor where after the test he calls us in and he gives us that bad health report, and we realize, just like that, our days are numbered. And then we realize that this planet does not hold the hope that I truly need. But the only hope I have is that Jesus will come again. Or it could be a chance visit from a police officer who knocks on your door and they tell you that loved one you just said goodbye to 2 hours ago, the loved one you took for granted, is now gone forever. Just like that. And you were snapped out of your lethargy and you realize the only hope that I have as a person, the only hope we have as a planet, as a people, is the second coming of Christ. Or maybe it's that birthday you get to and you realize that most of your years have probably been lived. And you're on the downhill side of life. And you finally come to the grips with the reality that the remaining years you have are going to go by so quickly. And the only hope I have is for Jesus to come again and to take me to that better place that he has promised me. And maybe that's where you find yourself today. Maybe you're already there. Maybe that's why you're here today. And maybe you are someone that you love has just been diagnosed with that condition. And the doctor has prescribed medication to take away the pain, but nothing can numb the pain that you're feeling in your soul as you wonder what's next. and you feel the hopelessness. And in the midst of despair, Jesus is saying to every one of us today, I will come again. I have something better for you. Or maybe you're discouraged because of aging. Maybe you're that person and you've been looking in the mirror and you realize that you've celebrated most of your birthdays and you're on the downhill side again. And the human body, is good for 60, 70, 80, maybe even 90 years, maybe 100. But by that time, we're pretty much worn out. And slowly but surely, our bodies perish, a little bit perish every day. And the hair gets whiter and thinner. And the bones get weaker, and the arteries get harder, and the muscles less supple, and the eyesight less clear. But the reality is, when Jesus returns, and he said he would, he says that my mortality will put on immortality, that this perishable will put on the imperishable. Just consider what the Bible has to say in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. This is found in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 51. Listen, I tell you a mystery. We will not all sleep. What Paul is saying is we will not all die. Some of us will live until he comes again. But we will all, whether we have died or not before he comes, we will all be changed. In a flash, in the twinkling of an eye at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, dun, 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 dun. The dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. For the perishable must clothe itself with the imperishable, and the mortal with immortality. And he goes on to say, when the perishable has been clothed with the imperishable, and the mortal with immortality, then the saying that is written will come true. Death has been swallowed up in victory. And when does this happen? When Jesus comes again, when the trumpet sounds. And so, do you realize what this means? I mean, has this sunk in the reality of what this means? When Christ comes the second time, we, you, me, will be made imperishable, immortal. We will never get sick. We will never age. We will not die. We will have no pain. We'll never have to say goodbye. We'll never have to worry about losing a loved one. We'll never have to worry about having enough or being satisfied enough or being good enough. I mean, do you really realize what this truth means? Have you personalized it? That this means you. You can live forever. You can celebrate with all the saints and all the believers of all time. It sounds too good to be true. But it's not. Again, now, I know we're a bunch of skeptics, and we doubt everything we hear. I know that. It's our culture. We've heard it all. And so we wonder, how can I really know? I mean, you're telling me I should really put my hope on something like this? I mean, it's been 2,000 years. Where is he? We'll talk about that in a couple weeks. But really, how can I know whether I could have any hope that this is actual reality? And just, again, we'll cover some of these things in coming weeks, but just today, I want to share one thing with you so that you can leave here today with just a little bit of faith to be able to say, you know what, I think this might be right. I think Jesus might really come again. And it's this. It's fulfilled prophecy. The Bible, time and again, has God saying, this is what I'm going to do in the future, so that after it's happened and after I've done it, you can know that you could trust my word. And there are things that God said he would do 100,000, 2,000 years ahead of time, and then we're able to look back in history and say, wow, he said that in 600 BC, and that happened in 1400 AD. And wow, that's pretty amazing that God did that. And it happens time and time again. For instance, many of you have studied the prophecy of Daniel chapter 2. And in Daniel 2, God lays out 2,600 years of verse history. Says, this is what I'm going to do. These are the kingdoms. This is when they're going to come, how they're going to come, and how those will be divided, and all these different things. 100% it's been fulfilled. The only thing that hasn't been fulfilled is that last part where Jesus comes again. And we look at it, we say, well, if 90% of it has come true so far, and God predicted it all, I bet the last part's probably right. The prophecy of Daniel chapter 9, where God says 600 years before Jesus is born, this is the exact year Jesus is going to be baptized. This is the exact year he's going to be crucified. 27 AD, 31 AD. I'm just going to tell you beforehand, this is what's going to happen, so that when we get to the other side of it, we look back, we say, wow, God said that's exactly what would happen. It happened. I trust his word. As a matter of fact, there are over 300 prophecies in the Old Testament, some say over 350 prophecies in the Old Testament that talk about Jesus, specifically Jesus, how he would be born, when he would be born, where he would be born, what his ministry would be like, what he would be like, how he would die, how his clothing would be gambled over, how he would be betrayed for 30 pieces of silver, how he would resurrect. Over 300 prophecies on the life of Christ. Did you know Jesus fulfilled every one of them? Every one of them. What are the chances that that's just kind of a coincidence? Some people wonder that very question. Peter Stoner, maybe you've heard me share this before. Peter Stoner, he's professor emeritus of science at Westmont College. He wanted to kind of set out and to determine what are the chances that one person just living randomly down through history would have fulfilled these prophecies of Jesus in the Old Testament. And so he said, let's just start with 8. Let's just take 8 of these 300-some prophecies, and let's look at the population and say, how many were there and where were they born and all of this, and let's look at these things, and let's figure out statistically the probability that one man living down through history would randomly fulfill 8 of these prophecies. He got 600 of the best students at Westmont together, statisticians and mathematicians and scientists and all this, and they began to crunch the numbers. And this is what they came up with. The chances, the probability that one man living down through history would randomly fulfill 8 of the Old Testament prophecies of Jesus would be 1 chance in 10 to the 17th power. Not very probable. To illustrate the improbability of this, I want you to consider the entire landmass of our planet, 7 continents. And imagine the entire landmass of our continent, of our world, is covered in little tiles, 1.5-inch square. So imagine this is everywhere in this room and out into the parking lot, all over North America, all down into South America, up into Antarctica, Europe, Asia, Africa. It's all covered with these little tiles. You're given as much time as you want to wander the planet because on the bottom of one of these tiles is a red X. Just one tile on the entire planet has a red X. You can wander as long as you want, but you can only bend over 1 time to pick up 1 tile. If you were given 100 lifetimes to wander, the chances, and you just bend over 1 time, pick up 1 tile, the chances that you pick up the 1 tile with a red X on the entire planet is the same probability that one man living down through history would coincidentally fulfill 8 of the prophecies that Jesus fulfilled, and he fulfilled over 300. Jesus is the Son of God. We can know for certain that he will come again because he has kept every other promise he ever made. And the second coming of Jesus is our only hope as a planet and as a people. He will come again. And that is my only hope for a better future. It is your only hope for a world without goodbyes. It is our only hope that we will have life after the grave. Let not your hearts be troubled. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go, I will come again. These words and this hopeful promise from Jesus have burned within the hearts of Christians for the last 2,000 years. We don't have to worry about the fate of the world or wonder where we'll ultimately end up. Because here's the thing, if you are a friend of Jesus, you wonder how you get there or how to be ready? It's just this. If you are a friend of Jesus, if you have welcomed him into your life as the leader of your life and as the only one who could pay for your sins, then you have nothing to worry about. If you have come to the place where you said, Lord, I'm tired of running my own life. I would like for you to run my life. Come sit on the throne of my heart. Lead me from this day forward. Then he is coming for you. You can be certain he will come back to take you to a better place. And concerning this amazing event, though, Jesus warned, he said, watch out that no one deceives you. He says, watch out that no one deceives you, for false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and miracles to deceive even the elect, if that were possible. So evidently we need to be aware when it comes to things of the end of days. We need to know what the Bible has to say about these things so that we won't be deceived. And so for the next several weeks, we're going to be studying these events surrounding the end of days. We're going to look at this thing called the Great Tribulation. We're going to talk about what signs are for and the signs of Jesus' second coming. What's the purpose of them? We'll be looking at this scary thing called the mark of the beast and the seal of God. We're going to look at what happens after the second coming with the millennium. And finally, we're going to end this series with the question, well, where is he? Why the delay? Let me just say, if you're here with us as a guest or for the first time, I hope you'll choose to continue to stay with us as we kind of study this topic together, because it is our only and our greatest hope.